What's up guys, it's Tom here and welcome to a brand new football news video where we absolutely have to talk about Saudi Arabia taking over football and trying everything to promote their league, and also they are trying to win the hosting rights of the 2030 World Cup. So is Saudi Arabia and their football, their money, ruining football, and what are the implications, and also what are the very complicated ownership structures at Chelsea, because it's very interesting, I think, and we have a lot of things to talk about in this video. But first of all, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But of course, if you want to know all the details, listen to this video and then give your thoughts in the comments below. So Jamie Carragher tweeted worryingly that Bernardo Silva, for example, who is linked with Saudi Arabia club, he's in his absolute peak years. And he has been one of the best midfielders in Europe for the past 5 years. And Jamie Carragher said, I wasn't worried about the Saudi League taking players in their 30s, basically being at the end of their careers, but a touch worried with players below the elite, Ruben Neves. But if this happens, if Bernardo Silva signs for a club in Saudi Arabia, it's a game changer. It feels like a game changer. Saudi Arabia have taken over golf, the big boxing fights, and now they want to take over football. The sports washing needs to be stopped, and I fully agree. And I mean, Ruben Neves and Bernardo Silva are in their prime, and they are playing in Premier League teams regularly, but the money is absolutely crazy that Saudi Arabia clubs are offering. Chelsea at the moment are laughing because all the mistakes they made in recent transfer windows, they could be bailed out by Saudi Arabia and their money and the way that they are trying to promote their league. If you didn't know, PIF, the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, who own Newcastle, they are on a mission of buying and running just football in particular. You know that the fossil fuel industry and the oil reserves are running out, and modern capitalism is turning towards renewable energy sources. So Saudi Arabia has to pivot, and they have to have an alternative strategy to just relying on the insane profit from oil. And the relationship between Chelsea and Saudi Arabia is very ambiguous, very murky. And PIF are an investor in Clearview who own 60% of Chelsea. They are an investment company, and I mean it's very fishy that Chelsea, who prior to this everybody thought they will have huge problems offloading some of their older players because they are on insanely high wages, and now in comes Saudi Arabian clubs, and they are just very happy to take the older players of Chelsea. And I can understand why. They still have a high profile name. I mean, Hakim Ziyech and N'Golo Kante. And I mean, we saw this with the Chinese league as well. Some have compared the Saudi invasion of football to the Chinese wealth that infiltrated football a few years back. But this is different because Cristiano Ronaldo and Karim Benzema, two of the biggest names in the world. I mean, Ronaldo is literally, alongside Messi, the biggest name in world football, and Benzema is the current Ballon d'Or winner. And these kind of players didn't go to China when China was investing in their football league. So this is different. This feels different. This feels like Saudi Arabia has the money to buy everything and everyone, and they want to rule football. And I think it's a very dangerous path if the Premier League and football go down this road, because where does it stop? Where does it end? And of course it doesn't help that the United Kingdom government, their biggest trade partner outside of Europe is Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia's biggest trade partner in the whole of Europe is the United Kingdom. So basically the Saudi government, the UK government have very close ties going back decades. And I already said that when the Newcastle takeover was about to happen, that the UK government will accept that because they will be put under so much pressure from the Saudi Arabia government. Accept the Newcastle takeover, accept, this happening in the Premier League. Otherwise, the Saudi Saudi Arabia government will pull all of these hugely expensive contracts from under their noses. And I mean, it became clear when the large majority of Newcastle fans so easily ignored the multiple ethical and human rights issues that surround the Saudi ownership. The prospect of lots of money, big signings and team success, that's what matters to the majority of football fans. And the UK government also has very shady dealings with Saudi Arabia, but our overall system in the UK is pretty decent still, because the people who speak out against the government don't get killed. But in Saudi Arabia, there was an instance of, in one day, there were 81 people executed. I mean, that's just absolutely horrendous. And football is quietly, loudly and quickly getting into bed with Saudi Arabia because they have almost unlimited amounts of money. And of course, Liverpool aren't perfect themselves, because Liverpool also are owned by billionaires who are not clean. Liverpool are sponsored by Standard Chartered, and Standard Chartered was fined, the banking company, £1 billion for money laundering and breaching sanctions against Iran in pro-Israel moves back in 2019. But you know, there are levels to this, and I mean, a USA owner is still better than country who have very questionable human rights issues. But this is where I think ordinary football fans they just can't pass clear judgment on all the issues, because you would need to know such in deep knowledge about all these countries, all these companies, whoever is taking part in capitalism. You can't just buy clean brands, because everybody is doing things in some or other way that is harming other people. That's just sadly the way the whole capitalism and the whole society, based on, of course, money and wealth and status. That's how our society is structured, sadly, nowadays. And anybody who is taking part in this society, you know, could have a guilty conscience if you really dig deep into these issues. At the very top level, you could argue that football is already gone, with Qatar owning Paris Saint-Germain and potentially taking over Man United, with Saudi Arabia owning Newcastle. They are owning 60% of Chelsea, with the United Arab Emirates owning Man City, and I could go on and on and on. There are too many world superpowers involved, and the regulation was required at the turn of the century, 25 years ago, before Chelsea was taken over by a Russian oligarch who got his wealth in very questionable fashion. Qatar will probably own Man United by the end of the summer. It's pretty much hopeless for football to recover from this, which is really, really sad. And Chelsea insists that the Clear Lake group, Clear Lake Capital, had nothing to do with their 4.25 billion takeover. But the way Chelsea have been spending money, I mean, they spent 600 million on transfers in the past, in the January and the previous summer transfer window. I mean, without Saudi Arabian money, where does that money come from? No USA investor spent that much money in 6 months in any football league, never mind in the Premier League, the richest league in the world. And yes, Saudi Arabia bought Newcastle for just 350 million, but they also invested billions in assets managed by Clear Lake Capital, the company which owns 60% of Chelsea. This is absolutely conflict of interest. How can a country like Saudi Arabia own the majority of two different football clubs in the same league who are competing against each other? Clear Lake Capital, the company owned by Saudi Arabia's investment fund, committed at least 2.5 billion pounds, that's what the Daily Mail is recording, into Chelsea's takeover, and that was led, of course, by Todd Bowley, who also bought a stake in the club alongside with his business partner Mark Walter. And listen to this, guys, because this is the amount of money that is involved. The American-based private equity firm Clear Lake Capital manage around 60 billion pounds of assets on behalf of around 300 investors globally, including significant, huge investment from the PIF, which is basically the Saudi Arabian government, who paid 350 million pounds to buy Newcastle United. And this is the thing, the Saudi Arabian government, the PIF, is investing in several other private equity firms in addition to Clear Lake Capital. The Premier League were convinced of the source of Clear Lake's funding to approve the deal quickly after the government finally gave the go-ahead in May. But as I said, the UK government is in bed with the Saudis. So of course they will give the green light. And the Premier League wants just more and more money. They are a greedy organization themselves. They don't care about moral or ethics. Otherwise they would have kicked Man City out a long time ago from the league. All they care about is the brand of the Premier League and to make it as rich as possible. So they will invite all different countries who have a lot of money, and they don't care about the human rights issues, the ethical implications of everything. The Premier League just wants the richest league in the world, and it's already like the Super League, which of course many people were up in arms about the Super League. But I don't see that many fans complaining about Chelsea and Newcastle and Man City spending ridiculous, unsustainable and unbelievable amounts of money on players. And I mean, it's very fishy that Chelsea just very conveniently can sell a lot of their players to Saudi Arabia, so they get their huge wages off the books, they get money in. And I mean, why on earth are Arsenal helping Chelsea as well? That's ridiculous that Arsenal are buying Kai Havertz for something crazy like 65-70 million pounds when Kai Havertz had an absolute disastrous season at Chelsea. And I mean, Arsenal are bailing Chelsea out with this huge money deal that they are doing. And listen to this, Chelsea lost 121 million pounds for the 21-22 season, so the season that just finished. They lost an additional 153 million pounds the previous season, but since being bought last year by a group led by Todd Bowley, they spent 600 million pounds on new players. And Chelsea are in talks about a lot of their players going to Saudi Arabia: Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Karim Hudson-Odoi, Koulibaly, Edouard Mendy, Hakim Ziyech. They want to sell a lot of their players so they can start signing players. And this is very sad and very bad for the Premier League in my opinion, because this is basically a free for all card at Chelsea. They can basically get away with spending so much money on just whoever is the flavor of the month, the flavor of the week. Chelsea didn't do proper team building, they didn't have a proper structure, they were just gung-ho signing players left, right and center, and now the Saudi Arabian League and those clubs are bailing them out, alongside of course Arsenal as well. But of course some people argue that there is nothing to see here. Jordan Gardner, who is the former managing partner of a group that invested into Danish side FC Helsingør, and he's currently a consultant with 21st Group. He said people are reading way too much into the connections between PIF, Clear Lake and Todd Bowley. PIF is one of many investors in the entire portfolio of investments with Clear Lake. At this level there are many close relationships between various private equity funds, sovereign wealth funds and high net worth individuals. While the optics don't look great, I'm sure this entirely comes down to existing relationships between these parties and has nothing to do with PIF's investment in Clear Lake. I don't see any conflict of interest on conspiracy here whatsoever. It just feels awfully convenient for Chelsea to be able to sell 6 or 7 of their players who are not really wanted elsewhere for quite a significant amount of money in total. The biggest issue for Chelsea is they had to get rid of their huge wages. And if you get rid of 6 or 7 players' huge wages, you are saving millions of pounds every week. Add that up for a whole year, and suddenly, if Chelsea move all of their deadwood players to Saudi Arabia, suddenly they can start spending money again. And that's where I find this story very fishy and very suspicious. But of course the Premier League at the moment looks like they will allow it. I think some really deep and honest individual independent investigations should take place into all of this, and the truth may need to come out quickly, because this transfer window is like nothing I've ever seen before, honestly, with the figures that are going around and with the Saudi Arabia League, Saudi Arabian clubs being able to sign Cristiano Ronaldo, Benzema, and I mean Messi almost went there as well. The money that they are offering to players is absolutely crazy. I mean, N'Golo Kante will earn 200 million in 4 years, I think, or something like that. Absolutely crazy amount of money. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, have a nice day, see you later, goodbye.